Time to go? Okay. Oh, that's working. Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Holenstein. Thank you for attending. I'm responsible for the Shadowbase product line at Gravik. And today I'm going to take you through a very brief overview of that product line, and then we'll talk about some of the recent additions, enhancements, bug fixes, that kind of thing we've put into the product, as well as where we're taking it in the near future. Standard disclaimer slide. So I'll be showing you a bunch of Shadowbase videos. I'll hit the main solution areas and we'll drill down on those. I'll talk about something interesting we call Shadowbase adapters, and then the releases, as I mentioned a moment ago. So with that, I'm going to play an overview video. This video and a series of other ones are all available off our website.
The technology landscape is changing. Today, business is global, and it's 24/7. It relies on IT applications in continuously running data centers. It requires constant uptime and demands data sharing across an enterprise. Shadow-based business continuity software ensures extreme availability levels where system uptimes are measured in centuries. To eliminate unplanned downtime, there are several different availability architectures. To eliminate planned downtime, Shadowbase software also performs zero downtime migrations. The synchronous replication offered by Shadowbase software enables applications to achieve zero data loss during catastrophic failure and recovery. Shadowbase data and application integration software is by far the most flexible and least disruptive technology for data sharing across an enterprise. This software is extensible. Application code, also called user exits, are embedded into the Shadowbase replication engine, which allows the user to rapidly integrate applications and synchronize databases to create new business solutions. Shadowbase utilities empower the user to configure and manage environments, load online databases, convert and map data between environments, restore corrupted online databases, validate and correct two datasets, and even see what data was changed and when. The Shadowbase product suite for HPE nonstop and other servers, such as Linux, Unix, and Windows, provides real-time data replication and integration for a nonstop world. Contact us today and learn how Shadowbase software can benefit you. Hewlett Packard Enterprise globally sells and supports Shadowbase solutions under the name HPE Shadowbase.
What I've pasted here are the standard out-of-the-box source environments to target environments. Shadowbase can unidirectionally replicate anything on the left to anything on the right. We call these the standard ones because these and a whole host of versions of each of these are part of our standard QA cycle when we do a new Shadowbase release. You'll also see listed up there something called user exits. We'll talk more about that later, but there are some environments we don't support natively. You can always bolt on an adapter, which can be written for Shadowbase to feed an environment that we don't directly support. The list here are the bidirectional Shadowbase environments, and so anything on the left can be synchronized with anything on the right. You can be, of course, changing that database on the right as well, and we will synchronize those changes back with the source database on the left. So in the prior environment, we have a source and a target. In this environment, we have two sources. You're running your application active, and we're modifying those environments and keeping everything synchronized. In the business continuity space, this is a huge market for us, and we're doing a lot with replacing like RDF and a number of other helping customers improve their RTO and RPO. The standard metrics of RTO are when you need to build out a business continuity solution, what's your business requirement for how fast you need to recover? And so we're going to talk about that. You also have to worry about the potential for data loss, right? You lose an entire data center catastrophically, fire takes everything out. What happened to your data? Is it possible that some of your data that was generated and committed on the source never made it to the target? Poof, it's gone. In the Shadowbase world, right, if we map time from left to right, There is a point in time from your last data saved point until a failure happens, which is your at-risk point for data loss. There are technologies that will either give you the potential for data loss or eliminate the potential for data loss. And Shadowbase has solutions in those areas, and we'll talk about that in just a second. From the failure point forward, how long does it take to recover, right? These are going to be business decisions. Your business will tell you whether you can afford to lose data or not, and your business will tell you how fast you need to recover. But the idea here is the architectures that have been implemented affect the speed of recovery. And so the idea here in a Shadowbase world is to move these 2 points so that you lose either very little in an asynchronous product or no data loss with synchronous replication. And you recover faster and faster to the point where we have what's called instantaneous recovery, because you're running your application actively in multiple sites. You lose a site, you still have that application available elsewhere on another system, in another data center, that type of thing. And so we provide a number of architectures. The potential of data loss gets better, less and less data loss to no data loss vertically, long recovery times to what's called immediate or instantaneous, meaning you have continuous availability of application services even across catastrophic failure. Active passive, sizzling hot takeover, fully active Shadowbase architectures implemented in asynchronous replication. And if you want to get into the world of no data loss, those 3 architectures deployed again in our synchronous replication product. That synchronous product is in an early adopter mode, so if you're interested in this, talk to us offline, and we'll work with you and your HPE account team. Okay, let's take a look at the next major functional area, which is what's called data validation, right? Knowing that your databases, in particular in a business continuity space, are in sync with each other. It's the kind of issue where how do you prove, right, that your quote-unquote backup database actually has everything in it, it's complete, it's consistent, and it's correct. And so let's take a look.
Data replication is at the center of the Shadowbase product portfolio. It is important to monitor and correct data in order to detect and resolve improper behavior, ensure continuation of proper business operations, and comply with audit and regulatory requirements. A backup database or second copy of data is worthless unless it is correct, consistent, and a complete replica of its source database or data. The Shadowbase Compare and Repair software suite provides the capabilities necessary to meet these needs. Shadowbase Compare
And so typically with our business continuity customers, they purchase Shadowbase Compare, obviously, to validate their replication environments. And by the way, we support active-active environments with our Compare engine. It's pretty sophisticated. Now we're going to take a look at what Shadowbase can do more in the heterogeneous space, what we call data and application integration. We differentiate data integration, which is replicating data changes from one database into another database, a second database as the target, from application integration, which is data changes in one database being packaged and then delivered to some downstream application, which is typically not a database. We're going to focus on some Attunity replacement projects that we've done in order to highlight some of the features available in Shadowbase. So we've been doing a lot of these. That's why we're highlighting this. And in particular, Attunity Connect, Federate, and Replicate, Shadowbase has some really great solutions for. We've done this for more than a dozen customers now, and replaced an architecture of a product that went EOSL with a new Shadowbase architecture. And there's a hot link on there where we can drill down in more information. But very quickly, in order to understand what we're talking about, originally the customer had an architecture where they had off-platform reporting applications, stuff running on Linux and Windows, those types of environments. And they needed to go after their inscribed data. And Attunity had a very clever product that would actually make that inscribed data look like a SQL data source. So you could run off-platform reporting using SQL-like querying against your inscribed data. And how the architecture basically worked was every query or every report, the reporting infrastructure would go up to the nonstop, read in all of the inscribed data, filter, cleanse, package it, send it back to the reporting application, and then paint that data into the report. This kind of an architecture, though, suffers from a whole lot of issues. One issue, network latency, because of the API being remote. The remote connectivity API is end of service life. In other words, the product's going away. The nscribe to SQL cleansing, transformation, and delivery of that data had to occur for each report run. So obviously, system load would increase every time somebody ran this report. The workload was getting overwhelming because as more and more people started to run these things, they had this massive explosion of query load on their nonstop. It's just a non-scalable architecture. So what can we do? Well, we'll go through two Shadowbase architectures to replace this. We've implemented both these architectures for customers. In the first architecture, it's actually fairly similar in concept to the original architecture. The customer still has essentially the same reporting apps running off platform, and they are running those apps now against a copy, an SQL copy of the database that lives off platform. Any SQL database we support can be used as this off-platform copy of the data. Customers choose Oracle, they choose SQL Server, they choose Sybase, they choose Postgres, whatever. And so the idea here is we use Shadowbase utility called SVDL-UTIL to map those inscribed definitions into the create table statements. And we use Shadowbase to load that data once, doing the transformation, filtering, cleansing of ugly, dirty, messy inscribed data into normalized SQL data structures out in this target database. And then we do a load. And after the load, we keep that data synchronized. And as data changes on the source, it's simply the data changes now that have to be replicated down to the query database. The reporting simply runs now off-platform against the off-platform query database. So what is the benefit? Well, it isolates the querying and reporting into this off-platform database, transforms and normalizes the data only once when it needs to be replicated, not every time the customer runs the report. We've separated the nscribe operational database from the query database We convert the NScribe files into SQL tables. That's really, really helpful because if you have a lot of OLAP analytical tools, now you can run those against that query, against that SQL standard database structure. And of course, it supports ODBC and JDBC standard access into this data. So this is an example of what we call off-platform query database. NScribe data on the source, we're putting it out into a data warehouse, a operational data store, or some off-platform database. Well, we can do the same thing on platform. In this example, this customer took their NScribe data and put it into SQLMX. We certainly support SQLMP as well, but SQLMX is, of course, HPE's future, and so for the SQL product. So in this case, we replicated the data from the NScribe source. We used SVDO-UTL to create the create table statements. We use Shadowbase to load those tables. We use Shadowbase to synchronize those tables, and Shadowbase keeps those tables synchronized from that point forward. Now the queries run from the off-platform environment through standard ODBC or JDBC against the SQLMX database. For those of you who know something about SQLMX, it is a very sophisticated query engine and can do support actually standard OLAP tools and those types of things through these interfaces. So they gained pretty much the same set of benefits as the prior off-platform, except in this case, now they're managing it up in their nonstop in a fault-tolerant environment. Because the one thing you'll notice when it's off-platform, where's the DR, where's the fault tolerance? And of course, with SQLMX, they get the localized fault tolerance, do business continuity replication, then you have geographic fault tolerance or geographic business continuity. We're isolating the reporting from the operational database, transform and normalize the data once. We're offloading querying from NScribe into SQLMX, and of course you can have different indices than even the NScribe database has, and the rest of the features limited, the rest of the features listed there. Let's take a look at Shadowbase for data and application integration, something called the Shadowbase Essentials Bundle. This is an add-on, so for those of you doing data and application integration, there's a suite of tools that are really useful that are separately orderable for that. There's a tool called the Shadowbase Audit Log. So if you're ever tasked with building a archival, historical, transactionally based database of who did what to your data, you can use the Shadowbase Audit Log feature to do that. What this feature does is takes every insert, update, and delete that you tell it to and creates a historical archive of it. So if you want to know who deducted $100 from your account 3 months from now, you can know that. And you don't have to modify your application. We see all this data change and can create these archival and historical databases using SAL. We have a really cool tool that takes an SQL-like syntax that allows you to query a TMF set of audit trails. You want to see who did what when inside your TMF audit trails. Shadowbase Audit Reader will allow you to do that. I already mentioned the DDL utility. It takes NScribe DDL and produces create table scripts and other types of SQL statements in order to build those equivalent NScribe files into SQL tables. And then we have the same thing for SQLMP going out to any of the targets we support. And the orange is the future product for SQLMX that's coming. We have a very interesting tool called Shadowbase ETL. So those of you who do a lot of data warehousing, you can use Shadowbase ETL to take data, put it in a format that we may not support a target environment for, into flat files, into maybe JSON. And then you can take this JSON and load it into something else. In this case, Shadowbase is dumping the information to disk. In other cases, Shadowbase user exits might be used to load directly into that target environment. SB map. So any of you who have ever done data filtering, cleansing, transformation, ugly inscribed data into beautifully pristine SQL data, you got this problem. Inscribe, takes anything of any format into any field, and if you have a date field or you have a number or something, you might have to cleanse and transform this stuff. So SBMap is a scripting tool that allows you to do that. We've had SQLMP as a source available for a long time. This next release, 6.7, will add Nscribe as a source. This means you might not have to write user exits to do cleansing, filtering, transformation of data when you're going from Nscribe into some SQL target that we support. We also have an interesting tool called Shadowbase Undo and Redo. Essentially it says, you deploy a new version, say your pathway server, and it screws up part of your database. Yuck. Do you want to take an application outage and recover from tape, even if it's a TMF operation to do that? Or maybe don't take the app outage, run Shadowbase Undo. We will generate all the statements to roll those changes back, and then you can apply them so that that file or table can stay online, your app can stay online, while Shadowbase fixes the part of it that got screwed up with that buggy program. And then, on top of all of this, when we typically talk about replication, we talk about DML, data replication. But then there's this concept, what if I change my file structures? What if I change my schemas? And that's called DDL command replication. And so we support that for SQLMP now, which is useful for those RDF customers that use SDR when they migrate to Shadowbase. And our next release is actually has Nscribe DCR in it, and a future release will have SQLMX DCR in it. Adapter extensions. So these are things that anyone can write. Shadowbase provides the infrastructure for someone to come along and bolt on an adapter so that Shadowbase can now feed data into something we don't support out of the box. And so, how do we do that? Well, there's infrastructure on the source side of Shadowbase where you can put an adapter, and there's infrastructure on the target side of Shadowbase where you can put an adapter. And those adapters may be using some of our provided tools, or they may be written in code, a very rich API infrastructure that we provide so that you can package, transform, and deliver that data into some other environment. So you are now, as this adapter is now taking the responsibility that when we replicate the data, it can put it in the format that some target environment needs to receive it in. And so, a good example of this is Phil Lee and his company produced an adapter to feed data into certain AWS environments, and he's building an adapter to bolt onto Shadowbase to feed Kafka. Anyone can write these adapters. We provide all the front-end services of loading data through the adapter or of synchronizing change data through that adapter into the target environment. Recent and future releases. We released our most recent release, that's GA 6611, in November of 2021. We released a restricted TCF for certain people in the room a week ago, that is 6612. But, so if you're interested in looking at the details, the soft docs are available online, or you can download them from Scout. Additional and new features, right? SQLMX, periodically, they come out with new data types. One new data type they're coming out with is sequence objects. The next release of Shadowbase will support them. I mentioned our transformation and mapping utility is adding in Nscribe source files. We recently added Postgres, and there's a series of additional utility support we needed to add in, and so those are coming out in the next release. And of course, we're doing a lot in the compare and repair space in order to improve speed and provide additional performance. We also, I mentioned synchronous replication, so we've been working on this a long time. And, we've been working on this a long time, and so for those who are interested in that, we have what's called an early code drop program, and we're testing with select customers and partners. And eventually, of course, we do expect that to release as well in a controlled availability. Non-nonstop platforms. Our most recent release was January of 2022. All those different SPR and T numbers reflect the various platforms. So HPUX, AIX, Linux, Windows, IBM platforms, that sort of thing. And we're adding in mostly, a lot of these things are additional usability things for things like latency reporting, monitoring, alarming, IO tracing, and some various command types of enhancements. New license request generation tool. So any of those of you who have ever had to fill out a Shadowbase license request form, because we need to know things like what platform you're going to run on, what database you're going to use, what version of those things are you going to use. Well, this tool will go out and actually collect all that info. So for all the different platforms we run on. So it'll make license requests simpler. But this is the key. Shadowbase for nonstop, the next release is 6.7. Shadowbase for non-nonstop, the current release that's available is 6.7. When you cross the 6.7 boundary, you must get new Shadowbase license files. The format of licensing has changed. So even if you're an existing Shadowbase customer, you're not ordering new licenses, but you're upgrading to 6.7 from a prior release, or you're upgrading past 6.7 from a prior release, what will happen is your current license file needs to be refreshed. So you need to contact the HPE license manager. Okay, so keep that in mind as you upgrade your Shadowbase releases. Of course, the new versions will tell you. It'll look at your old license file and say, this license file cannot be run with this new version of Shadowbase. Contact the license manager. But you don't obviously want to be doing that in the middle of a migration. Very quickly, Adelgy has a neat tool called Web Viewpoint Enterprise. And so they have these things called adapters, which can be configured for applications. Shadowbase to them is an application, just like Base24 is, just like Connex is, just like a number of other applications are. And you can define metrics for Shadowbase or any of the other products they have an adapter for. Essentially what it is any attribute we publish as a measure attribute, you can set in threshold values, get alarming, and get monitoring for with this new tool of theirs. And so in this case, they're setting up thresholds for latency. And of course, there's colorization schemes and does it alarm with emphasis or not and those kinds of things. But the nut is they have a pretty slick tool for taking a look at it graphically, of course, as what's going on. And then, of course, you can click and drill down on these things and look at history in a nice geographic type tool. So if you're using the Web Viewpoint or Web Viewpoint Enterprise environment, this kind of stuff, what we've done is come out with a plugin that plugs into their tool. And that plugin doesn't cost anything, but you need their tool in order to do that. For those who are interested in having the same thing because you're an IR shop or you're some other tool shop, let us know, because there is some amount of integration with IR's prognosis already. But if there's another tool that you would like to see Shadowbase integrated into, like ASAP or something, beyond what we have already done, let me know. Summary, very quickly, we're HPE's strategic go-forward data replication solution. We won a number of awards. If you're an RDF shop, you should plan at some point for an upgrade to Shadowbase. RDF is mature, and we've done dozens of these RDF migrations. Obviously, we're committed to nonstop, as well as a variety of what are called other server platforms, even some of the ones that don't have a lot going on, like AIX or HPUX. And we are obviously heavy into product development across the entire suite of tools. Shadowbase is what's called mission critical and business critical. I mean, we live in the space of high and continuous availability. All kinds of features that you're used to having in both nonstop and in off-platform solutions. And obviously, we replicate homogeneously, heterogeneously. We can replicate audited as well as non-audited data. And Shadowbase is extensible in that you could add new features into it to do specialized things that you might want to do. And of course, HPE is where you'd buy it. So it's HPE sales, HPE global GNSE support, HPE services, and of course, we back them up everywhere. In some parts of the world, HPE uses regional resellers, so we, of course, work closely with them as well. This is a quick reference card. Business continuity, you want to deal with unplanned downtime, planned downtime, zero data loss. You want to do something in the data or integration space. You want to do something in the essentials, data validation space. And so kind of a quick reference card that's useful for the salespeople. And with that, I've hit the end. Does anybody have a question for me? Yes, sir. Say that again. Prognosis integration. So Shadowbase has long tokenized things like EMS messages and has long time had a very rich amount of, say, measure attributes. And when you turn on the Shadowbase measure reporting, Shadowbase publishes all that information through measure, and prognosis can be set up to do very similar work as you can do with the Attunity. Oh, I'm done. I gotta go. Thank you very much. We're here. Come talk to us if you have any more questions.